being here today, and I'm going to start. Thanks, Sam. The October 7th, 2021 meeting of the Zoning Committee of the St. Paul Planning Commission will now come to order. For the record, the chair of the Planning Commission has previously determined that it is not practical nor prudent for the Planning Commission and its committees to meet in person pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.02. Considering the COVID-19 health pandemic, it is not feasible for any member of the Zoning Committee to be present at our regular location. Committee members attending this meeting are doing so by telephone or other electronic means. It is also not feasible for members of the public to attend the meeting at its regular location due to the health pandemic and emergency. Arrangements have been made so that applicants and members of the public may also attend this meeting by telephone or other electronic means. Accordingly, no meeting is being held in City Hall Council chambers at 15 West Kellogg Boulevard at this time. Again, this public hearing is being conducted remotely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting is also being recorded. Even though this hearing is being conducted remotely, the committee's public hearing rules and procedures still apply as if the committee were meeting in its usual place. These rules and procedures are as follows. The zoning committee's recommendations and findings must have a rational basis based upon the St. Paul Zoning Code and applicable state and federal laws. The zoning committee's actions today are recommendations. They are not final decisions. The committee's recommendations are forwarded to the Planning Commission for final action. The committee's recommendations will be considered by the full Planning Commission at its regular meeting held 1 week from Friday. The Planning Commission's meeting is open to the public, but it is not a public hearing. The decisions of the Planning Commission on conditional use permits, non-conforming use permits, site plans, variances, and other zoning permits are final decisions unless appealed to the City Council. The decisions of the Planning Commission on rezoning applications are only recommendations. By state law, the City Council, following a public hearing before it, makes the final decision on rezoning applications. The following rules and procedures govern today's public hearing of the Zoning Committee. The chair will call the secretary to take attendance by the committee. Committee members will need to respond verbally for the record. Committee members, during the meeting, please mute your microphone except when recognized by the chair to speak. Discussion is intended for committee members and staff only, except during public hearing items when the chair invites individuals to speak. Staff will be monitoring microphones and muting committee members and members of the public as needed. Use the chat function only to indicate that you have a question or comment. The chat function is part of the official meeting recording. Type Q or question into the chat feature when you have a question, and or C or comment if you have a comment. The chair and staff will monitor the chat function so that the chair may recognize committee members and staff in an orderly way. After being recognized by the chair, committee members should state their name before speaking. This helps others in the meeting and assists with the official recording. When chair calls the committee to vote on agenda items, the secretary will be called to do a roll call. Committee members must respond verbally for the record and vote either yes or no. Cases will be called in the order they appear on the agenda, and the chair reserves the right to limit the length of testimony if deemed necessary. I'll ask the recording secretary to now conduct a roll call of the committee members that are present for this meeting. Each committee member should acknowledge their presence by saying here. Go ahead, Ms. Langer.
Commissioner Grill.
Present.
Commissioner Hood.
Present.
Commissioner Rangel Morales. Commissioner Riley.
Present or here.
Commissioner Said.
Here.
Commissioner Tagia.
Here.
And Anda Joy is excused.
Thank you. If you are a member of the public that would like to speak during a specific item's public hearing, you will be asked to identify yourself at the appropriate time. The public shall not use the chat for communicating public testimony, as it is not considered part of the public record. After I read the item number and title, staff will give an oral report on the item, and then I will open up the floor for committee members to ask questions of staff. After that, I will open the public hearing on the item. All testimony and questions will be addressed to the chair. You may speak in favor or in opposition, and you will be limited to no more than 2 minutes. People who exceed the time limit may have their microphones muted by staff. I will first ask for testimony from those in favor and then from those in opposition. You must provide your name and address for the public record. Please mute yourself during this meeting, except during your 2 minutes when you are specifically called upon to speak. You are allowed to speak only once, with the exception of the applicant, who will be allowed an opportunity to respond to the testimony and answer committee questions. And I think the first thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes from September 23rd, 2021. So I need a motion. Sorry.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Sayed, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Saeed. Sam, can we take the roll call, please?
Commissioner Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ringo Morales,
Yes.
Commissioner Tegia, Commissioner Said,
Yes.
and Chair Riley.
Yes.
5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Oh, hang on. Commissioner Taggioff here. I don't think my name was called.
Oh, I did. I didn't hear your response, but I'll put you down. 6 in favor,
Sure.
0 opposed.
Yes, please.
Great. Thank you very much. And then let's see. There's one. Looks like there's one item on the site plan review committee meeting for Tuesday, October 12th, which is for a mixed use building at 176 Robert Street. That is to be built there. I think there's an article in the paper about it. Kind of excited about that myself. So now we have our new business, and the first item today is for a conditional use permit to convert the entire first floor of a commercial building to residential use at 1179 7th Street East, the northeast corner at Duluth. And Mr. Dermody has a presentation for us. Thank you.
Thank you, committee members. This one is a somewhat complicated with the architectural details and history, so bear with me as I go through some of the details here. The request is to convert the entire first floor of a commercial building to residential use at the northeast corner of Duluth and 7th Street. Can you see my screen here? Just make sure before I go further.
Right now we
Yes.
can just see you.
Let's fix that. Try again. Maybe if I shut myself off, it'll make it easier. Okay, how about now?
Yes, that looks great. It's a zoning map. Is that correct, Mr. Dermody?
That is the zoning map, yes.
All right.
So
Thank you very much.
talking about the northeast corner of Duluth and 7th Street, which is part of a pocket of T2 zoning. This is after 7th Street comes out of downtown, makes the turn and becomes straight east-west street. Here's an aerial photograph of the same site. It's got industrial, McQueen across the street, and then the mix of uses here on 7th Street. I will then put up a couple of comparison photos because we'll be talking about these more. So this building was constructed in 1890 as a commercial building on the first floor and dwellings on the second floor. It was long used as a bar and restaurant before becoming vacant more than a decade ago, 2008. So it's been vacant for quite a while. And the site was rezoned in 2013 as part of a larger rezoning. It was rezoned from B3 business district, general business district, to T2 traditional neighborhood. In traditional neighborhood districts, there is a clause in the code that requires a conditional use permit for converting a commercial ground floor to more than 50% residential. That same clause of the code requires that in the conversion from commercial to residential use, the elements of traditional storefront design, where present, shall be retained. And then it goes on to list some examples of those. The building at this site was designed for commercial use on the first floor. It had its, as you can see from the photograph from 1941, it had its main entrance towards the corner. It had a column, non-structural column, just outside of that. Display windows facing Duluth, and then a couple of larger display windows facing 7th Street. Of course, magnificent architecture on the second floor as well. It had this intermediate cornice above the first floor. And then you can see in 2021, just a couple months ago, what is still there. There certainly have been changes. The column was removed decades ago. Many of the windows have been filled in, not all of them, but the openings for the windows between the columns remain. So that historic element is still there. You can see the cornice above the first floor is still there. The openings for all 3 of those display windows I mentioned are there. There was a superficial additional column added here that somewhat matches the other ones. And the windows themselves have either been covered with wood or filled in with wood. The clear store windows up above have been gone for decades and filled in with wood, and the kick plates down below were filled in with wood as well. So certain elements remain, other elements have changed. Because of this requirement that existing traditional storefront elements remain, staff is recommending a condition that certain of those elements remain, including that a primary entrance at the southwest corner of the building facing both East 7th and Duluth Street be retained, the historic storefront window openings facing both public streets, the historic vertical brick piers on the front facade, and the intermediate cornice over the storefront. All must be retained. I will highlight some other findings as well before turning it back for question. There are several general standards in the zoning code for conditional use permits, and one of them has to do with the comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan conformance. This site is designated for mixed use, which allows the proposed use. And the Dayton's Bluff neighborhood plan summary from 2009 calls for supporting reuse instead of demolition of existing commercial buildings such as this one. And so the reuse is certainly supported by the comprehensive plan. The comp plan and policy LU9 calls for promoting high quality urban design that supports pedestrian friendliness in a healthy environment and enhances the public realm. The use here, the proposed use, can comply with that policy if it retains storefront windows to enhance the adjacent public realm and pedestrian streetscape. So there are a number of other findings there, but those I would say are the key ones. The final finding goes into quite a bit of detail about a historic resources report at the time of a legislative hearing through the vacant buildings process on this a few years ago, if you're interested in those details. So there's one condition recommended by staff. I will also suggest a second potential condition for your consideration, and this one is suggested by the city attorney's office, just to make clear for DSI, the Department of Safety and Inspections, that if you approve this with condition number 1, that it actually goes through the process that way, and that would be something to the effect of revised plans that conform to this approval shall be submitted to the Department of Safety and Inspections for review and approval. We have not received a letter from the Dayton's Bluff Community Council on this one, and we have one letter of opposition from a neighbor. With that, I'll turn it back to the committee for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. Are there any questions from the committee? Commissioner Tagioff, it looks like you might be trying to speak, but there's a delay.
Nope.
All right, well, if there's no discussion, I will call on the applicant. Is the applicant here?
Rashad Kennedy, were you able to make it?
There's a phone number that lights up, but I can't hear what they're saying. Is that perhaps Mr. Kennedy?
It is not. It is just a different person listening.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, this is the neighbor across the street. Mr. Kennedy is in the parking lot right now at the site. Do you want me to go get him?
The chair will defer to city staff on that one and the city attorney.
Chair Peter Warner, if the neighbor is willing to get the applicant, and if he's able to get the applicant, so the applicant's available to speak to the committee and address any questions you might have, I think that would be preferable. But
Okay.
in
Give me
terms
a
of
Give me 1 minute.
timing,
I'll
I'm
run
not sure
over.
how to do that.
Give me 1 minute. I'll run over and get his attention.
Yeah. I know that the individual from Maryland Avenue is online, and maybe we can table this matter and take care of Maryland Avenue and come back to this one. I'll toss that out there as an offer.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Is the rest of the committee amenable to that idea?
This is Commissioner Grill. I think that makes sense. That way, if it takes a minute to get everybody back online, we're still moving forward.
Great. Do we need to do anything official to suspend the conversation on this one?
I think the record reflects what's going on, and why don't you just, as chair of the prerogative, just say we'll hold off on this one and take the next matter, so that
Okay.
those folks can get going. And Mr. Dermody is the staff on that one anyway.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Warner. So we'll move on to the second item on our agenda today, which is 406 Maryland Fuel and Auto CUP, which is conditional use permit for an auto convenience market and auto service station at 406 Maryland Avenue East, which is the corner of Maryland and Arkwright on the southeast corner. Mr. Dermody, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This first time, by the way, that I think I've heard of an applicant being personally summoned, so that I hope Mr. Hanna is successful in getting his neighbor. I did send Mr. Kennedy the link just now, so hopefully he can join us. Would like to talk to you about this other site. I'll attempt to share my screen on this. Are you able to see the land use map here for Maryland Avenue?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The subject site here is at the southeast corner of Maryland and Arkwright. Two of the other corners are also commercial uses, and we've had site plan approval for the fourth corner here being commercial use as well. Otherwise, generally surrounded by single-family residential uses. And here is an aerial photograph of the same. This particular site has a vacant gas station on it and tire repair service, which the tire repair did receive a conditional use permit about 2 decades ago for outdoor storage of used tires. And it's been a gas station since the 1960s. The application before you is for an auto convenience market and auto service station. So in other words, a gas station and convenience store, but not to include a tire service facility. Here are the plans. Of course, the conditional use permit is for the use. There would be a building in a similar location as today, although somewhat larger, and the gas pump area would remain. New parking would be delineated. The trash enclosure would move from one side to the other, and actually it's going to be moved again from where it's shown on here. And notably, one of the 3 curb cuts will be removed. And so that the one along Maryland closest to the corner is proposed to be removed. And this has received at least preliminary site plan review comments, and it is in the middle of the site plan process. For a conditional use permit for these uses, there are a number of conditions listed in the staff report that must be met. One of these for an auto service station is that a 10-foot buffer area with screen planting and obscuring wall or fence is required along any property line adjoining an existing residence or residentially zoned property. That finding is met. To the south, this is rather obvious. To the east, it may not be. What's shown on this site plan is a wall, but they actually own 10 feet to the east of it. And so that buffer is met fully east of the wall. And then they have just a few feet, about 8.5 feet more between the building and that wall. So there'll be, something close to 18 feet total from the property line. The minimum lot area for the auto service station use is 15,000 square feet, and for the other use is actually 12,000 square feet. They meet both of those findings. This site is about 23,000 square feet in size, and so plenty large to meet those findings. Another required finding is that outdoor accessory sales or goods of equipment shall not be located in a required setback, parking or maneuvering space, or substituted for required landscaping. That finding can be met and is a recommended condition that we have. Another finding I'd like to highlight is comprehensive plan conformance. This condition is met for both of the uses. The 2040 comp plan designates the site's future land use as urban neighborhood, which allows for limited neighborhood serving commercial uses, typically at the intersection of Arterial and Collector Streets, as we have here with Maryland and Arkwright. The site plan that I described here that has the elimination of one of the curb cuts, that minimization and consolidation of curb cuts is specifically called for by comp plan policy T12, and so that is supported by the comprehensive plan. Finally, I'd like to highlight that the use will not be detrimental to the existing character of development in the immediate neighborhood or endanger public health, safety, or general welfare. Staff finds that condition to be met. The use is similar to the previous use with the main exception that it eliminates the outdoor tire storage, which is a clear benefit to the immediate neighborhood and general welfare. For all of the reasons in the staff report, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for auto convenience market and auto service station at this address, subject to 3 additional conditions. One is a modification of a typical boilerplate condition that final plans be approved by the zoning administrator for this use shall be in substantial compliance with what was submitted, except that the trash enclosure shall be relocated near the southwest corner of the main building. That's important for meeting a code requirement, so we wanted to call attention to that here. Number 2 is an almost standard condition for these types of uses to ensure that there is not negative impact on the surroundings, and that is vehicles awaiting repair or pickup must be stored on site and not on streets or alleys. And finally, number 3, the third recommended condition is that outdoor accessory sales of goods or equipment shall not be located in the required setback, parking or maneuvering space, or substituted for required landscaping. The Payne-Phelan Community Council has not provided a recommendation on this application. We have received one letter in opposition, which is in your packet. I'd be glad to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. Are there any questions for staff? I don't see any questions from the committee for staff. Is the applicant here?
Yes, ma'am. The applicant is here.
Great. Is there anything you would like to add to the presentation by staff?
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Craig Anderson. I'm an advisor to the owners of the group, and the owners of the group are here with us. Again, my name is Craig Anderson, but I am here with Badawi Junaidi and Khalid Alul. I'm going to just swing the camera around just so they can give a wave to the camera. Mr. Khalid Alul, Mr. Junaidi.
Thank you. Can you or all three of you state your address for the record as well, please?
Personal address or the address of the business unit?
The address that your personal address, I guess. Yes.
231 East 105th Street, Bloomington, Minnesota 55420.
Hi, Badawi Junaidi. It's 10308 Fox Run Bay in Woodbury, Minnesota.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Craig Anderson, St. Paul, Minnesota, 1832 Ashland Avenue, St. Paul.
Appreciate it.
It is believed that our architect is also possibly on the call too, should there be any additional questions that need to be asked. Thank you, committee.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? If not, I will ask if there's anybody to speak in favor of this application other than the applicant and their representative. Anyone to speak in favor of this application? All right, and I'm going to ask for those who are interested in speaking in opposition. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? I'm going to ask this one 3 times. Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? It's almost easier in a virtual environment. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Great. Seeing none, I think we can close the public hearing and have our discussion. Is there anybody who'd like to make a motion or ask any questions of staff or the applicant, etc., on the committee?
This is Commissioner Grill. I'd like to make a motion.
Sorry, Commissioner Grill, this is Chair Riley. I saw Commissioner Rangel Morales' hand come up first, so I'll let you two battle it out.
He's welcome to go.
Well, I'll defer to Commissioner Grill, and then I'll just second likely.
Okay.
But I'll let Commissioner Grill finish.
Thank you.
All right,
Go ahead, Commissioner Grill.
This is Commissioner Grill. I'd like to move the staff recommendation for 406 Maryland Fuel and Auto CUP. So the staff recommended approval of a conditional use permit for the auto convenience market and auto service station at 406 East Maryland, and then subject to the following 3 conditions. Final plans approved by the zoning administrator should be in substantial compliance with the plans submitted and approved as part of the application, except that the trash enclosure should be relocated near the southwest corner of the main building. 2, that vehicles awaiting repair or pickup must be stored on site and not on streets or alleys. And 3, outdoor accessory sales of goods or equipment shall be located in a required setback, parking, or maneuvering space, or substituted for required landscaping.
Thank you, Commissioner Grill, for the motion. I see Commissioner Rangel Morales.
I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Ms. Langer, will you take the roll call, please?
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Said,
Yes.
Commissioner Tagia,
Yes.
Commissioner Grill,
Yes.
Commissioner Rango Morales,
Yes.
and Chair Riley.
Yes.
6 in favor, 0 opposed.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Langer and Mr. Dermody. That concludes that matter. We can return to the first matter. And is Mr. Kennedy available to speak with us?
I am here. How you guys doing?
Great. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
We had
I was having some difficulty logging on.
no worries. We're just glad we were able to find you and get you online now. We heard the presentation from staff, Mr. Dermody, and we're just if you have anything you'd like us to know that was not included in the staff report, feel free to share.
No, not at this moment.
Great, thank you. Yes, Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if the applicant was aware of the additional language that I had proposed to Mr. Dermody and Mr. Dermody had relayed to you folks, and I don't know that the applicant may have heard that. So maybe Mr. Dermody could go over that with him on the record.
Please.
That'd be great. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Dermody.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So the staff recommendation in the staff report had one condition, that the elements of traditional storefront design in the building, including primary entrance at the southwest corner of the building facing the two streets, the historic storefront window openings facing both public streets, the historic vertical brick piers in the front facade, and the intermediate cornice over the storefront must be retained. I also read a proposed second condition just for clarification for DSI. Revised plans that conform to this approval shall be submitted to the Department of Safety and Inspections for review and approval.
So it's essentially, are you talking about the front of Duluth in Arcade, 7th Street? That's the corner you're talking about?
Right. So it's the historic storefront windows facing both streets. The entrance at the southwest corner, the vertical piers on the front facade, and the cornice over the entire first floor storefront there. All those are proposed to be retained.
Okay, so all of that is there. Those windows had got busted in by some I don't know who did it. We've been having vandalism over there. We have cameras out there, but it's not stopping anybody at this point in time. But all those windows had got broken in, so we just boarded those up. Those windows will be there, except for one that was on the corner. We framed that up right there just because, honestly, just because there's a lot of windows right there, and just felt as if that is going to be, I don't know. I just thought it made more sense to get rid of that corner window just because everyone that was vandalizing it. So the windows are not 9 weeks out right now.
So this is Chair Riley. So for clarification question for you, Mr. Kennedy, are you saying that you're not able to maintain all of the windows?
All of the windows except for one.
Okay. And then the other condition, should I put that in the chat? The new one that's not in the staff report, or perhaps Ms. Langer can, or Mr. Warner. I think the request is for new plans to be submitted to DSI as part of site plan review. Is that accurate, Mr. Dermody?
That is accurate, and I can probably most easily type it into the chat because I have it handwritten in front of me.
Excellent. Great. Okay. All right. Does anybody on the committee have questions for the applicant? Mr. Warner.
Chair, I don't have a question for the applicant, but the applicant indicated that he could do this except for one window, and I'm not clear which window he's talking about. If perhaps staff, when they're done typing, could put up that those two comparison photos, the chair could identify, or I'm sorry, the applicant could identify which window he's talking about.
That's a door. Yeah, photo. Yep, that's okay.
I'm in the same.
Oh, yeah, this is the neighbor again. We're looking at the photo again. The one window he's has an exception to is the one that used to be a door in the original photo. So that angled door on the corner behind the post.
Chair Riley? Bill Dermody?
Yes, sir. I'm really sorry. I was inundated by small children. I apologize.
That happens. Chair, if I could clarify something?
Please do.
The proposed condition is to retain 3 windows and a door at the corner. So two windows facing 7th Street, 1 window facing Duluth, and a door on the corner. Not a window on the corner.
So you want a door there, is what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
So for clarity, I'm sorry, Mr. Dermody, and for Mr. Kennedy's sake, I see in the August 2021 picture several windows facing the dumpster, 1 door under the sign pillar, and a boarded window to the right. Yep, that's the one. And then the I don't know what you want to call the fins to the right of that, which looks like they used to be a window in the 1941 picture. So is the condition any set of 2 windows on either side and 1 door that is existing? And perhaps Mr. Warner.
Sure, Riley. The proposed condition is the it's probably easier just to refer to the 1941 photo because it's clearer in that one. A door at the corner, and then the 3 main display window areas. Whether they're actually full display windows of that size or not is not key to this condition, but windows in those 3 locations. So 1 facing Duluth and 2 facing 7th Street. This is an interesting situation. You know, if I could, with the code says where existing, these elements shall be retained. Things have changed over time. Certainly the openings are there. The windows themselves are in various states. They're often smaller. Some of them are boarded up. The area that you described as the fins is all wood at this point in time. We don't have a lot of history with this part of code being applied. We have applied it once or twice in recent years, and this exact situation hasn't arisen in those cases. So when a building has changed, and there's even a more recent photo of Mr. Kennedy's work, which doesn't have official permit approval, just in the last few weeks, that I could probably bring that up too. It brings up the interesting question of what exactly is being retained. So you've got these photos in your packet, and I'll just bring up maybe these are the most recent ones from just last week when I was out there with Rashad looking at the site. And it will be an interesting judgment call for the zoning committee and the planning commission, how to interpret this. Traditional neighborhood zoning is meant to encourage a mix of uses and pedestrian friendly design, and that's why this part of the code was put in there about retaining original storefront design, was for that pedestrian atmosphere and pedestrian friendliness. But this is a building that's been vacant for a long time, and things have happened even just in the last few weeks to it to change what's been going on there. So what exactly will be retained is an important and not 100% clear decision for you to make.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. Mr. Warner?
Thanks, Chair. I really don't have anything to add to what Bill said. I think that's spot on. I think you have to make an assessment of the staff recommendation and how you'd like to proceed here. The reason why I offered that language was to clarify that whatever decision you make, that the plans that are presently in your packet, if they're presented to DSI, that DSI knows that those plans have changed based upon the staff recommendation, and to make sure that DSI doesn't approve something by mistake. But to go back to the matter that's before you, you have the staff recommendation with respect to this particular finding, and I will leave that up to you folks to assess how you would like to approach it.
Thank you, Mr. Warner.
I have a comment/question. This is Rashad.
Go ahead. Yes,
So
please.
there was two pictures back to back, not this slide that's shown right now, but previously it was a more recent one. It wasn't these pictures, and there was an older one. So yep, here we go. So the one on the left, that was okay. So the one on the right, there is a door. I see the door next to the two windows. But when we had purchased it, there was a window right there. Now that was the window that got busted up along with the other ones next to it. So I'm curious, whoever had owned it previously, they were able to change that storefront to what it used to be, and they were allowed to do that. I guess that's what my question is. And there will be windows there. They're just boarded up right now. The only change that I want to make is to where the door used to be in the older picture. I had that no longer a door right there.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Is it a window and not a door?
It's closed up.
It's all closed up. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yes, all closed up. Yes, sir.
you. Mr. Warner, is your hand still up to add context, or?
I'm sorry, I'll take it down.
No, that's all right. It happens. All right. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant that might help us move forward? Otherwise, I'll open it up for the public hearing and we can discuss amongst ourselves. But I'd like to sort of know what the committee's pleasure is at this point. Commissioner Grill, thank you.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Grill. I'm just wondering, in response to the applicant's question, basically around the rules changing, is there anything that staff can talk about modifications that might have been made between the time that this was a historical structure and the purchase? Just trying to figure out what's reasonable in this context.
Thank you, Commissioner Grill. Mr. Dermody, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Riley, Commissioner Grill. The site was rezoned in 2013, and it's been vacant the entire time since then. So I believe those that change that was referred to with the corner door becoming a window happened sometime before becoming vacant in 2008. And at that time, it did not have T2 zoning on it, and therefore retaining the traditional storefront was not a requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. Are there any follow-up questions or additional questions from the committee members? All right. Well, perhaps Mr. Kennedy would be willing to stand by because I think we may want to have some additional discussions with him. But at this time, I will ask if there's anybody who is here to speak in opposition to this item. We did receive a letter in opposition. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition on this item? All right, and I realize I'm doing this backwards from the last time, but let's go back to someone to speak in favor. I'll restart that conversation again. I'm very sorry. Anyone here to speak in favor of this application? All right. Anyone else in favor? All right, and I'll go back to the opposition. Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application for conditional use permit at 1179 East 7th Street? All right, last time, anyone here to speak in opposition? All right. We'll close the public. Well, I suppose do we have any other questions that people want to talk about before we close the public hearing? No? All right. Questions for the applicant or staff? Discussion. I'm all ears. Okay, this is Chair Riley again. I'm going to start with a question for either staff or the applicant. Well, maybe I'll start with a question for Mr. Dermody. The report says about the conditions associated with the traditional neighborhood standards. There are, there's a request for reopening of historic windows and removal of non-original materials from HPC staff from 2019. With the primary entrance and I see the two window openings facing, got it, but facing both public streets. Has there been a conversation between zoning staff and heritage preservation staff about what that might look like that could be shared with the applicant?
Chair Riley, the putting the entrance on the corner, is that what you're talking about?
Well, the condition is elements of traditional storefront design, including a primary entrance and window openings facing both public streets. And what we see in the existing structure and the blueprints that I see from the packet, or the drawings, I guess, the elevations from the packet, it's not clear to me what the alternatives might be to someone who needs to purchase windows and doors and make them work with a building that they've sort of already laid out the interior of. And so I'm wondering if there has been conversation with anyone about what that might look like to sort of give the applicant an idea before we make a decision today. And then I'm also wondering if maybe we can't make a decision today if that has not happened.
Chair Riley, one thing to note is that this is not a locally designated heritage preservation district, and so there are no standards to apply to it. That there has not been a conversation about how windows should be or entrances should be if they are put in here. I would say that we would certainly be willing to connect Mr. Kennedy to Heritage Preservation staff for advice on that. As far as what's required by the condition, though, it's fairly open. It's not very specific. The condition says there should be an entrance at the corner and historic storefront openings. Historic storefront window openings facing both public streets. I think the intent there is that they're more than slit windows or, you know, piano windows or something like that, that they resemble something like a storefront. I would say that most likely what you see in the photo from August 2021, what you can make out from behind these plywood coverings over two of the windows, those windows are clearly display windows, even though they are smaller than what was there in 1941. And so windows of that nature would suffice for the condition. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Dury. That helps me, and I'm wondering if you can show us on the elevation page, one of the elevation pages, which like sort of, you know, match up for us the elevation drawing and the image from August of this year, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that question?
Yeah.
Children crawling on me here too.
The page 13 of the staff report from the website shows elevations of the west, south, north, etc. Yes. And I believe we're talking about the south front elevation.
We're talking about two of the elevations, the west left side elevation, which actually does contain a window in the place that the condition says to. Then looking at the south front elevation, there would need to be three portions of this changed. A door placed at the corner, and then storefront style windows in place of what's shown as basically piano windows there. Because there's a bedroom on the other side and or a bathroom. That's why it's shown that way. But we do realize that would require laying out this unit differently, so that it probably the great room that's on the east would have to swap to near the corner, and the bedrooms that are currently on the west would have to swap then to the east side of the building. But those are the changes that would be required by the condition.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. I see that is listed as part the 4A in your report notes those suggestions. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes. Finding 4 has to do with modifications, and those suggestions for why modification is not warranted here are listed in 4A. That there is a reasonable way to meet these conditions and strictly apply the code. Modification is not necessary. It's just a matter of laying out the interior a bit different, and placing windows a little bit differently.
Thank you, Mr. Dermody. Mr. Kennedy, did that help clarify for you what the ask is?
Yeah, I understand what Bill is asking for. I do think that's going to make things extremely difficult.
Okay, thank you very much for the input. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions for the applicant following my monopolization of the time? Does anyone want to make a motion? Is everybody still here?
I suppose I can start the conversation. I'm just curious as to what others are thinking with regards to the window situation and whether to do staff recommendation or not.
Yeah, Commissioner Grill was the first hand that I saw, but I apologize if I missed Commissioner Tagiaf's hand going up first.
I'll do first, Commissioner Grill.
This is Commissioner Grell. I guess I'm sort of struggling with what an undue hardship on the applicant might be in this scenario compared to the goals that we're trying to get at through the plan. And I'm struggling with that a little bit because there are competing interests here. If this building has been vacant for this long, and then the heritage preservation aspect of it. I'm just struggling with that a little bit personally.
Thank you, Commissioner Grill. Commissioner Tagiaf?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also approaching it from Commissioner Grill's perspective here. I consider that, I don't know what the HPC might say about this, but it seems to me that if the intent is to preserve more or less the historical aspects of the street, then placing a window at that corner that sort of essentially conforms to the dimensions of the windows along the front would be sufficient to kind of satisfy any sort of aesthetic or kind of programmatical concerns about that corner. Whereas forcing it to be a functional door would certainly impose additional requirements in terms of the internal layout of the building that would seem to do not a lot to, I guess, preserve the historical look and feel of that frontage. But then I would defer to the HPC in terms of whether they had a strong opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Tagiaf. Commissioner Rangel Morales, do you have anything to say now that you've heard from others? Commissioner Hood, Commissioner Said, I think that.
No, I don't have any additional comments. I just I'm kind of struggling with the recommendation and then the struggle of well, not the struggle, but I guess the proposal of putting a window there and yeah, I don't.
Thank you. I guess I will say that I also am struggling with that, especially given that there's, I think if I understood Mr. Dermody correctly, there's no there's no requirement on our part to or on the HPC's part. It's not a contributing structure. It's not a listed structure. Is that correct? And then
It has that's correct, Chair. It has no official historic designation. There have been surveys done that state there is potential, but there's no designation in place.
Thank you. Mr. Said? Commissioner Said, did you have a question? I saw your hand, but then it went away. Well, given Mr. Dermody's confirmation of the facts that there's no this is really hard for me. I don't this is a really hard one. I don't want to unduly limit the applicant from being able to create more units, I think is kind of where I'm coming from here. But now I see that Commissioner Said is hands back up and Mr. Warner has also put up his hand. So we'll hear from Commissioner Said and then Mr. Warner. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, this is Commissioner Sayed. I'm just wondering if we, me too, I'm struggling to the window. If we thinking if we Mr. Germany and applicant can work, and then we can lay over in 2 weeks and work, together with the applicant and Mr. Germany for the window.
Thank you, Commissioner Said. Would you like to make that motion, or should we hear from Mr. Warner first?
We can hear Mr. Warner.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to point out that I saw Commissioner Hood had his hand up too, and I'm not. That's all I wanted to say. Had he been talked to about whatever his hand might be about?
Thank you very much, Mr. Warner. Commissioner Hood, I'm sorry I can't see all the hands. I appreciate the reminder.
Thank you, Chair Riley. So here's what's playing through in my head now, and that is we'd love to have this building kind of return to the glory of its original self and really activate that street front. But I have this fear that if we don't allow the applicant to configure the building and repurpose it to an active use right now, if this falls through and this building's vacant for another 5-10 years, will we even have this building anymore, right? From photos, it appears the exterior is getting toward a little bit of disrepair. I think it's great that we have an adaptive reuse, and I don't know how the language could or should be drafted, but I'm inclined to say that we draft up some type of compromise where we try to activate that street frontage as much as possible, really help to preserve the historic elements of this building and of the streetscape, while also allowing a lot of flexibility for the applicant to come in and kind of configure and give this building a new life. So I would be in support of Commissioner Said's delay of 2 weeks, so we can really come up with some rock solid language to make sure that we can find a compromise here. And on a side lighter note, I was doing some online reading about this building, and it is allegedly haunted. I don't know if that's anything that we can do with the commission, but just so the applicant knows, an FYI. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hood.
I did know that, and you walk through it and you get the heebie-jeebies sometimes. So I don't know what's going on with that building, but I'm definitely trying to turn it around. And I feel like me and the city are on the same page, on the same team. I just feel like making some of these changes is gonna be extremely difficult. And I just feel like I'm 28 years old. I'm seeing the bigger picture. I want to be working in St. Paul for the next 30 years. I got 842 Rice Street under contract. My plan is to, turn those into residential units, somewhere that people could be proud to live in. You know what I mean? And I just want to be on the same team with St. Paul. And it just kind of feels like if those changes do have to get made, it's going to be extremely difficult and really, really slow down the process tremendously.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And I think I'm going to have to ask you to refrain from commenting at this time, because we'd have to reopen to take more testimony from you. But we definitely appreciate your point of view. So thank you. No, that's all right. Let's see. I think I saw Mr. Dermody first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note if the committee is inclined to require something else for the storefront, traditional storefront being retained, on the basis that it would be a hardship to retain more of it. The fix is pretty simple as far as what we have to fix, whether you do it today or you want to wait a couple of weeks to do so. We would need to amend 3 findings. Number 2, we would have to just refer. Finding number 2 would be a quick fix of simply referring to how it's being modified through finding number 4. Finding number 3A, is comprehensive plan conformance, and we would just, we would potentially want to amend that. If you did not, with regard to the first floor windows, that would be a pretty simple and small amendment. But number 4 would be the big one. Finding number 4 is about modifications, and you would simply want to strike, I think, everything that staff has put in the finding for number 4 and replace it with the exceptional undue hardship that you believe is present, and why that allows relaxation of the usual requirement to retain the traditional storefront. So the big piece of work in front of you is knowing how you want to lay out that exceptional undue hardship, whether you do it today or another day. So I just wanted to put some structure to that if you wanted to make a motion to that effect.
Much appreciated, Mr. Dermody. Since we're on sort of a staff run, does Mr. Warner have something else he'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. In that context, I'd also add, if I understood the testimony correctly, the applicant seemed willing to work on the storefront window matters. The heartburn, if you will, came from the restoration of the storefront door, and I think if in the next 2 weeks, if we could narrow down the door issue and perhaps eliminate that as a reasonable compromise, as Commissioner Hood points out, to preserve the building and increase the housing options that this applicant is proposing, that might be something to work with, and we could bring back some language and plans for you that you could better visualize what's at stake here.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. All right, let's see, Commissioner Grill, and then Commissioner Said.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Grill. Mr. Warner took the words really right out of my mouth. I was thinking, I think probably along the lines of other folks, it seems like the door is the sticking place. And, you know, I know what we're going for here, and I'm generally in agreement that we should have that, you know, traditional storefront access. But in this particular scenario, that seems to be something that is causing or could potentially cause undue hardship if it requires a complete reworking of the interior of the building. And so I was very supportive of laying this over for 2 weeks, allowing staff to clarify that with the applicant and really see what items do or do not provide undue hardship, and then move forward from there. So I won't make the motion. I'll make this, let Commissioner Syed make it, but I'm in agreement there.
Thank you, Commissioner Grill. Go ahead, Commissioner Syed.
Thank you, Commissioner Gill, and Mr. Warner is just I agree. I would like to make a motion, but if other of my colleagues have other question.
I just have one question for the committee. Given the statements that were just made, it appears to me that it could be possible to simply remove the clause in condition 1 stating including a primary entrance at the southwest corner of the building facing both East 7th Street and Duluth Street. And then sort of let what historic storefront window openings facing both public streets means to the applicant during site plan review. That could be a quicker solution, but I don't know if that meets the needs of the group as discussed. Mr. Dermody.
Sorry, I just wanted to make one other thing clear, that there has been some comment about rearranging the interior being an exceptional hardship. The interior as it is laid out would make it very difficult to have display windows facing 7th Street. There are windows facing 7th Street in the plans, but to have them be display windows where there are bedrooms would be difficult. And so for that reason, it probably is a little more complex than just striking the door. It depends what your reasoning is for what's a undue hardship and what's not. If it relies on anything on the interior having to be redone, then it's actually more expansive than just the door at the corner.
Thank you very much. All right, so I will retract my statement, and Commissioner Syed, would you like to make that motion? The motion to lay it over so that everybody can discuss, I think, is kind of where we had landed. Is that right?
Yes, 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 yeah, this is Commissioner Sayed, and I would like to make a motion to move back 2 weeks and to welcome staff, Mr. Dermody and applicant to finding number 2, I think, front door.
All right, we have a motion. This is Chair Riley. We have a motion from Commissioner Said. Is there a second, or did Mr. Dermody have a additional clause to add?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. I need a second for Commissioner Said's motion, please. Commissioner Grill.
I'll second the motion. And then I would like a little discussion before the vote, just to make sure we're all clear on what we're doing.
Of course, thank you. Any discussion? Commissioner Grill.
So this is Commissioner Grill. I'm supportive of laying it over because it doesn't seem like we're all on the same page here. I think I am disappointed that I misunderstood Mr. Dermody in the comments around the windows versus the doors. I do think it would still be very helpful for staff to discuss with the applicant what looks like undue hardship in this situation, to see how many elements of that traditional storefront design that we're able to retain while not creating an undue hardship for the applicant. So I'm still very in favor of that. And I think maybe getting some clarity around what we've considered undue hardship in the past might also be helpful, if there's any precedent that we can look at or something for point of reference, because I really haven't run into these ones before. So anything that would be useful for reference for the committee seems like that might be a good use of our time to review over the next 2 weeks.
This is Chair Riley. Thank you, Commissioner Grill. And I as sort of a friendly amendment to that conversation, I think perhaps what we're really talking about almost is practical difficulties and not undue hardship. I don't know if it matters what legal language we use. There are more attorneys here than perhaps in other scenarios, and I am not one of them. But I think that would be very, very helpful. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to add to the discussion? All right. And Commissioner Taguieff, I saw that you dropped off and have returned. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the conversation before I call the vote?
No, beyond saying that I am also support the notion that the 2 week layover to figure out if we can come up with language that retains the windows but compromises on the door.
Great, thank you very much. Ms. Langer, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Said?
Yes.
Commissioner Tagia?
Yes.
Commissioner Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Rangel Morales?
Yes.
And I saw that Commissioner Hood had to log off, and then Chair Riley.
Yes.
5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Great, thank you. I think that completes our business. Does staff feel like they have the direction that they need to move forward? And Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, I believe I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just before we end, I just want to note that there is a meeting on our next meeting will feature this item as along with a rezoning of 1329, 1331 Lincoln Avenue between Hamlin and Syndicate Avenue, and that will be at the October 21st meeting 2 weeks from today. I think that completes our business. Is that accurate? Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Take care.